cruel you are. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Radio W.O.R.K.S World, and I am your vision host, Marion Bevington. And this is a bit of a strange start to the show because normally we have a pre-show chat, me and Marina, and I've just been told she can't speak to me. She's got a broken microphone. So, right, so I'm jumping in with 2 feet. I don't even know where I'm going to start today. So this is a good place to start, isn't it? What I want to do then is let's all start together by just taking a moment to become present. So just close your eyes and without changing anything, and I bet you do change something, but without changing anything, I want you to start to notice your breathing. So begin to notice whenever you breathe in. Begin to notice whenever the breath is coming out. Don't do the breathing, let the breathing happen. So when you're breathing in, the body slowly fills with air. And as you're breathing out, the body empties the air out. So let the body do the breathing and try not to change anything. So you'll notice that as soon as we start talking about breathing, your attention goes to your breath, and then you start playing around with your breath. So don't start playing around with your breath. Leave the body to do the breathing and allow the breath to flow. The body will allow the breath to flow if the mind gets out of the way. So notice as the breath travels into the body, and notice as the breath leaves the body. And just keep noticing as the breath comes in and as the breath comes out. Just noticing how the breath is moving in, how the breath is moving out. Just keep noticing the breath. And you may notice if you're breathing through your nose that the breath is cooler as it comes into the nose. And as it comes out, it's at body temperature, so you won't notice it. So noticing that the breath is cool as it comes in, and it's a little warmer as it comes out. The body's warmed the breath up. Unless you're in a very, very hot place, maybe you're in 40-degree heat, then this won't be true. But for all of the rest of us, the breath coming in is a little cooler. So just a few more breaths just to be present. And I'm going to be quiet and allow myself to follow my own breath and be inside me for a moment. So just the last 1 or 2 breaths, full of attention, mindful. And then bring your attention back to me. And just notice how you feel now that you've just spent those few seconds doing that conscious breathing, because that's all we did was some conscious breathing. Maybe it was a minute long. One of the things I love about this type of awareness practice, where we bring our attention to something that the body is doing, or that's something that's in the present moment for me right now. One of the things I love about this is it's like a reset. So, okay, so this is a really common problem, isn't it? So have you ever had a fault with your computer and you phone someone very technical, or some technical person comes along to help you? What's the first thing that they usually suggest? And I know this because I worked in IT for over 20 years. I was very technical. I was a programmer. I used to help people to use their desktop better. And so I was, often called to help people who were having a computer disaster. And the very first instruction that you must always give in the case of any computer disaster is, have you turned it off and turned it on again? Now that doesn't sound very technical, does it? Switch it off and switch it on again. But the reason that we do that is because the processor of the computer is often caught, the attention is the processor, and it's caught in a cycle of instructions that it doesn't know where to go next, or it's caught in a loop. And isn't that the same with the mind? That we get stuck in a cycle of thoughts or questions or visions of the future or worries about the past. And as we're stuck in that cycle, the brain doesn't really know where to go next, because it can either get stuck in some really horrible old negative cycle of something that went wrong in the past. Well, you don't want to be stuck in a negative cycle, and it's in the past, it's just not even real anymore. Or maybe it's in the future and it doesn't know how a situation is going to work out. Well, that's fine, because we don't know how things are going to work out in the future. So why worry about it? So can you see that when the processor, when the attention gets trapped in these loops, that the only thing that you can do is switch it off and switch it on again, or create a new set of processes that the attention can then be focused upon. And that's what you do when you switch your computer off. You turn the processor off, so it's like the attention suddenly gets moved away completely. And then when you switch it back on again, the attention starts up again, and this time it's pointing at a clean slate, if you say, like a clean desktop or something. So that type of breathing practice that we just did, just that 1 minute of focused breathing and allowing the body, the mind out of the way, is like the switching off of the computer. So when you allow the body and you stop the thoughts from directing the traffic of action, if you like, then that's the same as switching off and switching on again. And so when we go into that place of presence, where we just allow everything to be as it is, so it's like it's in a switched off state, things can reprioritize in a way that suits the body, not in a way that suits the worry or the anxiety, because these are like programs themselves. So they get the programs, the worry program gets out of the way, the anxiety program gets out of the way. And what comes back into play then is actually much more intelligent, full of much more wisdom. And so the subject, this leads me on to a really important subject, and it's the foundation of the work that I do on all of this. The need that this creates is that we need to find ways to clear the mind. We need to find ways to clear the blocks out of the way that stop us from doing and having what we want. And so what is it that stops us from doing and having what we want? Well, it's our ability, our brilliant ability to switch the brain into different modes, or to switch the subconscious or the body, to switch ourselves into a different mode. So the different modes, there are two basic ones. There's one that's when it's switched on, it pushes you into fight or flight or fear or freeze, all these Fs, where you are obsessed, is a good word. You are absolutely consciously obsessed with survival. That's happened, and it's probably very unexpected. It's quite dramatic. You don't have a strategy for dealing with it. So there's all these different ingredients in a situation, and those situations are called trauma. Now, a trauma can be a big T trauma or a small t trauma. So with a big T trauma, you know, that's like a diagnosis of of cancer or of a terminal disease, either yourself or somebody that you love. Hearing about that would be a trauma. Being in a car accident, falling over and really hurting yourself, that would be a trauma. standing up in front of a crowd and feeling absolutely humiliated, that would be a trauma. There are small t traumas as well. Things like when you hit a repeated problem. So if, for example, you're in a house where your parents are very critical or your partner is very critical, then every time they criticize you, it's going to fire you into fight or flight or freeze. It's going to bring up a fear that you're not good enough, or that you're not lovable, or that you're unacceptable in some way. Or that you're not worthy, or that you don't deserve. Some of these fears come up. And when these things come up, that switches the brain into this process, which is we get a burst of adrenaline, we get a whole cascade of chemicals in the brain triggered by this central part of the brain called the amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain. And so the emotions go into this shock or this trauma. And as I say, it can either be a one-off big trigger, or it can be a set of small like bullets, almost small wounds that build up over time. But each time you get wounded by the criticism, or the feeling that you're not good enough, or the feeling that you're humiliating yourself, or the feeling of shame, or whatever the feeling is that's bringing up this fear, it's going to keep knocking you into fight or flight or freeze. Now, the other side of the way that the mind and body can work is to be in growth and in evolution and in healing and because the energy that we need for things to grow and repair and rejuvenate and regenerate and to transform and to get greater and bigger and healthier, this state uses a lot of energy. Also, the fight, flight, and freeze state uses a lot of energy. Now, you can only be in one state or another. This is quite a black and white, quite a digital process that the mind and body can be in. Because would you agree with me that if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, which is the metaphor that a lot of people use about getting into fight or flight, if there's a fear in the body that survival is at risk, or if there's a deep fear that's being, a re-traumatized pattern, so for example, being criticized by your partner or your mom or whoever you believe is an authority over you, so feeling like a victim, this will keep you in this state of fight or flight or freeze. And in this state, you do not have enough energy to do healing and growing and creativity and all of these other great things that use a lot of energy, but they need the energy to be switched on to them. So while our energy is switched over into fight, flight, or freeze, we have a process in the body, and it's the part of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system or the automatic nervous system. And it's called the sympathetic nervous system. So it is sympathetic to our survival. It wants us to survive, and it means that it's only going to do absolutely crucial things that mean that we have to survive. And those crucial things, when they're fully focused upon, they take a lot of energy. So the other side of this coin, if you like, is called the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is like the paramedics. It comes along, it clears up the mess, it allows the body to relax and rejuvenate and replenish and repair and all of these great things that are absolutely needed for growth. So we've got these two sides to the coin. You can either be in fear and protection, or you can be in love and growth. So where would you rather be? Would you rather be in fear and protection? I don't think so. And if you would, maybe it's because you're an adrenaline junkie. And the reason that we become adrenaline junkies is because we are used to it. Not because we like it, but because it's familiar. And crazy thing is that when things are familiar, they actually feel, because it feels normal, it feels like it's like it's where you want to be. So my amazing business partner, Cheryl, does this great exercise. So you could do the exercise with me now. So just make one of your hands into a fist and hold it really tight and squeeze the fist really tight. Now, if you've got long nails, you'll probably be digging them in a little bit to your palm. But just bear with me for a moment. Just keep squeezing and keep squeezing. Put all of your thoughts and energy into squeezing this fist as tight as you can until it starts to feel like it's normal now. I'm getting used to this. It's starting to feel okay that it's squeezing so tight. And now, after squeezing it for a while, keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. If you let go, it starts to feel a bit weird, doesn't it? And then if you go back to the squeeze, that feels more normal and comfortable. So if you let go of the squeeze, it starts to feel really uncomfortable. My hand's even shaking a little bit. But if I put it back into the squeeze, that feels normal and comfortable. So let your hand go and give it a shake. This is just a physical exercise that helps you to understand when something seems normal, it seems comfortable, because we've repeatedly experienced it. And so we start to get used to that experience. I mean, it's the same if you go into a really, really smelly place. And that could be smelling wonderful, like the perfume counter in your favorite perfume shop. Or it could be somewhere that smells really bad, of sewers. And if you work in the City of London, you'll know that smell. I think at very low tides, we get the smell through the City of London, don't we? And it's just ridiculous. It's pongy, it's eggy, it's sulfury, it's smelly, it smells really bad. But if you stand next to that smell, or if you stand next to your perfect perfume counter, whichever you prefer, stand next to that smell for 20 minutes. And isn't it true that you just forget that the smell is even there? You become accustomed. And when we're accustomed to things, that's when it feels uncomfortable when it's gone away. So, or people who stay in abusive relationships. Now, they can be abusive physically, psychologically, verbally, sexually, whatever level of abuse is coming at you. You do, if you stay with it for long enough, and as a child, you have to, you get used to it and it feels normal. And so moving away from it, moving out into the place of growth and love, actually feels really uncomfortable. It can feel, people use words like, because I talk about this a lot with clients, my clients use words like boring. What other words would they use? Dull. Yeah, it's not exciting. It's like I'm waiting for something to happen. It brings up feelings of impatience. So, but I think boring is probably one of the most commonly used words. Uninspiring, lacking passion. All of these words get used because people feel uncomfortable, because they're understimulated, because they're used to being overstimulated. But as I said, when we want to be in real deep healing and growth, we need as much energy as we can. So being overly stimulated in a place where there's a lot of adrenaline doesn't allow us the opportunity to go into that place of deeper healing and growth and transformation. It's true that when we move outside of our comfort zone, we do grow there. And I think this is one of the key ingredients for me, that being outside of my comfort zone sometimes doesn't always feel like I'm overstimulated outside of my comfort zone. Sometimes it feels like I'm understimulated outside of my comfort zone, because I'm not having adrenaline rushes, and I'm not feeling my heart racing, and I'm not feeling the blood surging through my body. Actually, in that place of growth and peace and calm is really where my personal and inner evolution will happen. So you need to balance. You need to balance between growth being done through spurts of adrenaline and growth being done through spurts of relaxation, because they create different types of growth. Any amount of cellular healing or body healing or repair to do, then the energy to replenish new cells, to give the cells time to grow in a way that means that they're at their best, at their peak. You need to start understanding why relaxation, becoming calm are so important. And isn't it just crazy today, the amount of sensory input that we have? So we've got phones, we've got PCs, we've got Macs, we've got iPads, iPods, iPhones, I this, I that. Everything's I. It's all focused on me. And it's not good for me. Because there's a force behind that. There's a doing, have to be doing. And actually, being is what's needed when repair takes place. Now, I'm sure you've heard that often at night when we sleep is when lots of repair takes place. And this is why, because it can. Because we're not being overly stimulated. We're not, listening to our iPad, iPhone, I this, I that, I the other. We're not listening to all of those things. We are resting in sleep. And even if we're dreaming a lot, the body is actually still at rest. And so that's why repair and recovery and rejuvenation and all of those things can take place overnight. But it's not only overnight, we can allow that to happen in the day. And that practice that we did at the beginning of the session is absolutely perfect for getting you into a place where the body is able to do this healing and this growing. And so I think I'm going to do it again. Now that I've talked to you a little bit about why it's so important that we find ways to relax, let's do it again. Let's switch it off and switch it on again. So close your eyes. Begin to notice. Try not to change anything. In fact, don't change anything. Notice, is the breath moving in your nose or is it moving out? Breathe in and out through the nose and just notice what is the breath doing. Don't force it. Don't change it. Allow the breath. It moves in and out all day by itself. You never pay any attention to it normally. Unless you're out of breath or unless something happens to the breath. When it's normal breathing time, it just flows in and out. So bring your attention to the breath and allow the breath to flow. And as you're allowing the breath to flow, or visualize the breath reaching down behind the navel as you breathe in. It can go all the way down to the back of the navel, just a little bit below sometimes. Breathe out, you'll feel the body soften and it'll get a little bit smaller as the breath moves out. So it's like a balloon that's emptied a bit. And as you're breathing in, it's like the balloon inflating a little bit. And again, notice if the breath, can it go down to the navel? Can you feel it there? And then allow yourself, whenever the breath is moving out, just allow the body to let the breath out and allow the body to let the breath in as it breathes in. And at this little space behind the belly button, a couple of inches, a few centimeters behind the belly button and just slightly lower than the belly button. So deep in the center of the body, it's where the center of gravity is, called Dantian. It's also called the Hara, and in yoga, it's called the Svadhisthana chakra. And Svadhisthana means one's own place. So allow the breath to travel to one's own place and out again, just allowing, not forcing, not doing, by allowing. So you can just be and you can witness and observe the flow of the breath. It can be quite difficult to allow the breath to go all the way down into the belly. And again, that's because we have these habits. So just a few more breaths. And now we can switch on again. So after switching off, switch on, and let's see if the system works any better. So to finish off a little about what it is that I'm sharing today. So this state of fight or flight and the state of relaxation, they have a few other things that it's really important to understand. One of those is the blood flow to the prefrontal cortex. So this is the part of the brain just above and behind the eyebrows, where we do all our thinking, planning, rationalizing. This is the bit that is what makes us human. It's what makes us conscious of ourselves, self-aware. It's what makes us aware that we can travel off into the past or we can travel off into the future. It's what allows us to plan. It's what allows us to visualize, what might be. It's a really, really amazing piece of computing kit in the front of our heads here. It does much more than any computer that's been invented so far. Artificial intelligence is a very weak version of what we've got here behind this brow. And this part of the prefrontal cortex is connected to the sympathetic parasympathetic response, because we don't need to do planning, we don't need to do visualizing, we don't need to do all of these clever things that are part of our being, human and brilliant. We don't need to do any of them if we're being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. So the blood flow, and this has been recorded now in quite a lot of detail by many different, they use those MRIs where you'll go into a big machine and they'll monitor the energetic electric activity in the head. And they can see that when somebody goes into a trauma state, which is when they go into a fight, flight or freeze mechanism. So they've been criticized, or they remember a trauma, or, they have a fear of dogs and you show them a photograph of a dog, something like that. In that state, in that fight, flight or freeze state, the prefrontal cortex is no longer given much blood. The blood supply is cut off and the blood is diverted to the other parts that are going to be needed so that you can get away from the saber-toothed tiger. So that you can fight, or you can run, or you can play dead. None of those things need the prefrontal cortex to be, in use. So the blood flow is cut off. And when we do the breathing and allowing the body to relax back into its own natural breathing pattern, this blood supply can be re-triggered to come back on, to start to feed the prefrontal cortex again, which is where we get our brilliance back. So we go back into peak performance. Now, a lot of the people that I work with have had repeated trauma, or they have post-traumatic stress disorder. And this can happen for a lot of reasons. I mean, I do give the example that to a 4-year-old, a lot of our traumas began before we were 6, and we revisit them when we go into shock or trauma now. So the original source of that was something that happened before I was at the age of 6. Now, when I was 3, if I dropped my ice cream on the pavement and the ice cream van had just left, that was a trauma. In fact, the ice cream van could still be in front of me. If I'd have just got my new whippy ice cream and my mum gave it to me and suddenly plop, the ice cream is on the floor, because 3-year-olds are not really very good at hand and eye coordination, are they? So the ice cream's all over. That is a trauma to me as a 3-year-old. And I could still, as an adult now, be suffering with a sense of loss and shock and trauma every time I drop something, triggered by this original memory of dropping my ice cream on the pavement. I think this might have actually happened to me. I can really tune into the sense of loss when I visualize an ice cream on the pavement. So one of the techniques that I use with clients is a really clever way of reorganizing the blood supply so that it starts to feed the prefrontal cortex again, by dampening down and putting a relaxation cap on the fight or flight response in the body, especially when fight or flight is coming up for me and it's not appropriate, it's not helping me, it's not serving my present need in this moment. So that when I need to be creative and I need to have my prefrontal cortex switched on, these techniques that I use with clients are a really brilliant way of getting us unstuck and getting us back into action and getting us back into a productive state, a state where we can actually achieve the to-do list, Now, I don't know if you're like me, but some days just looking at my do list puts me into fight or flight. So I do tapping or I do visualization. Tapping's very powerful. And again, this is something that in science, they're just starting to produce lots of additional evidence with a lot of scientific experimental proof behind it now, that not only does the acupuncture system and the meridian system exist as a phenomena that we can read and recognize, but also the techniques that we use either by tapping or by massaging or by placing needles in specific points for the acupuncture system, for the meridian system. If we stimulate these very specific points, we can reverse the fight or flight process. So we can take the body out of the sympathetic nervous system and put it into the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's like the paramedics have arrived. And the effect that this can have can be instantaneous. It really is like taking that magic pill, because it can shift the state completely, and it can bring us, as I say, out of this fear, out of the negative state of fight or flight where we're actually quite dumb, and it can put us back into being a really, really peak performance, a magnificent state where we can shine, where we can be brilliant, and where we can grow and become even more effective and even more brilliant. And what I really love about the fact that the work that I do can seem quite woo-woo to people, it can seem a bit esoteric or like it's not tangible. But when not only have I now got the scientific evidence to back up what I talk about, but when you have the experience, there is no doubting the power of some of the processes that we use to help to bring us back into our peak state. There's quite a lot of stuff around this on my website, which is marionbevington.com. And it's really is at the core of the work that I'm doing in the Live, Love, Laugh Lounge and the Man Cave, which is where the wise people hang out. And wise people are people who know their why. So do you know your why? Have you found your why? Because the work that I'm doing with Cheryl, I mentioned Cheryl before, my business partner, is amazing because we're really able to help so many more people now to get out of fight or flight, to remove the blocks to magnificence, to allow you to step into your better self and to become even better than you could ever imagine. And so I want to end on that really positive note that it's possible, and sometimes it's actually really quick. So quick that even I'm astonished. The effect it has on me, the effect it has on my clients, the effect it has on participants in the workshops and the groups that we organize. And I'm just so happy that I've been blessed with the teachings that have given me all of the tools that I need to get this out there and share it with the world, because it's something that we all need. I love it. And I love sharing. And so on that note, I think we should just do a few more breaths together. And this time I want you to notice your heart. So slowly allow yourself to go to your breath and notice your heart as you breathe. Notice the breath goes past the heart. Maybe it feels like it goes through it. And the breath is flowing in and out. And you may notice as you bring your attention to the breathing that it starts to slow down, or it becomes more regular. And then I want you to imagine a line, an energetic line from the center of your heart, and allow that energy from the center of your heart to travel up to the prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain. So just seeing that beautiful energy. So the heart is sending, radiating love and relaxation, and it's being received in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Beautiful. And then go back into the center of the heart and allow this love and relaxation to now radiate into the very center of the brain. So behind the space between the eyebrows, deep in the center of the head. There are spaces there. There are, I think they're called intercerebral spaces or something like that. You've got spaces in your brain, did you know? So just allow those spaces in the brain to receive the energy from your heart. And the energy from the heart is full of love and wisdom and truth. And it generates trust. So allow the center of the brain to open to trust, because the heart always is in trust. Wow, really powerful. That's so beautiful. So every time you remember, just close your eyes and just become aware of the breath. Don't do anything. Just become aware. Become a breath watcher. And the more you become a breath watcher, the more brilliant you'll become. Brilliant beyond your wildest dreams. Namaste, everybody. Thank you for listening. And if any of you are coming along to the award ceremony on Sunday, I can't wait to meet you. Yay! We'll all be there together celebrating. So come and say hello if you're there on Sunday. And for now, I'm going to say goodbye and namaste. Goodbye, everyone.